She laughed. That's what I remember most. Not the words my father said when he told me the money was gone. Not my mother's face when she looked away. Just my sister Emma's laugh, high and sharp, echoing off the kitchen walls like broken glass. Guess you'll have to figure it out yourself, Riley, she said, twirling her car keys. New Mercedes. Paid in full. With my future. I was 17. They took $180,000 my grandfather left specifically for my education and gave it to her because she cried pretty and I never asked for anything. That day, I learned something crucial. Silence isn't weakness. It's strategy. And revenge doesn't announce itself. It compounds. 10 years later, I handed the realtor a cashier's check for $2.3 million. The house my parents had dreamed about their entire marriage, the one they'd driven past every Sunday after church, making plans they'd never afford. I bought it in an afternoon. Then I sent them the address for my housewarming party. This is the story of how being forgotten became my greatest advantage. My grandfather died when I was 16. Lung cancer, 3 months from diagnosis to funeral. He was the only person who ever looked at me like I mattered. Not the easy child. Not the backup plan. Just me. The lawyer read the will in an office that smelled like old leather and lemon polish. 2 college funds. One for me, one for Emma. Equal amounts. $180,000 each. Enough to graduate debt-free from any state school, maybe even have some left over. I remember my mother squeezing my hand. My father nodding, lips pressed together. Emma scrolling through her phone, bored. We drove home in silence, and I spent that night researching universities, calculating tuition, planning a future that felt, for the first time, possible. 3 months later, everything changed. Emma crashed her boyfriend's Audi. Totaled it. She wasn't insured on his policy. He threatened to sue. She cried at the dinner table for 6 hours straight, mascara running, voice breaking. I can't live with this shame. I can't face anyone. My life is over. My mother held her. My father paced. And I sat there, invisible as always, watching them forget I existed. The next morning, Dad called me into his study. Riley, we need to talk about your college fund. I knew before he finished the sentence. Emma needs help. This lawsuit could ruin her future. We're going to use your fund to settle it and get her a reliable car. You're smart. You'll figure out scholarships. Emma, she needs more support. I didn't cry. Didn't yell. I just asked one question. Did you even consider saying no to her? He looked at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. She's your sister. Family helps family. What about helping me? You don't need help, Riley. You never do. That's when Emma walked past the study, keys jangling, and laughed. Not cruel. Just dismissive. Like I was a problem that solved itself. Before I tell you what happened next, I need to know something. How many of you watching this have been the invisible child? The one who got good grades, never caused problems, and got nothing because you didn't need it? If that's you, subscribe right now. Because this story is for us. The ones who learned to win quietly. And if you're not subscribing, at least tell me why in the comments. I genuinely want to know what it takes to earn your support. What's holding you back? Because the people in this story thought Riley would just fade away too. I didn't argue. Didn't beg. I went in my room, opened my laptop, and rebuilt my entire future in one night. State school was out. Too expensive without the fund. Private universities with big endowments? That was the play. Schools that gave full rides to students with perfect scores and compelling stories. I had the scores. Now I needed the story. I wrote 17 scholarship essays in 2 weeks. Every one of them honest, raw, about growing up invisible, about being the child who didn't count. I didn't mention my family by name. Didn't have to. The words carried their own weight. I learned early that love is conditional. That mattering requires noise. But I also learned that silence can be a choice, not a punishment. And the quietest people are often the ones paying attention. For schools offered full rides. I chose Stanford. Not because it was the best school, though it was. Because it was 2,000 miles from home. Far enough that visiting for the weekend wouldn't be casual. Far enough that I could disappear into becoming someone they'd never recognize. Emma went to the state school 15 minutes from our house. Stayed 5 years for a 4-year degree. Changed majors 3 times. My parents paid for all of it, never once questioning why I never asked them for anything. I worked 3 jobs that first year. Tutoring, research assistant, campus tech support. Not because I needed the money for tuition. Because I needed to learn how money worked. How it moved. How people who had it thought differently than people who didn't. I slept 4 hours a night and studied the other 20. Business economics, data science, behavioral psychology. I wasn't learning to get a job. I was learning to build leverage. Junior year, I met Professor Chin. She ran a venture capital seminar that wasn't listed in the course catalog. Invitation only. She picked 12 students a year based on criteria she never explained. "You're in," she said after class one day, handing me a purple folder. "Don't make me regret it." The seminar met in her home, a minimalist glass house in the hills. The 12 of us, all scholarship students, all hungry in ways wealthy kids never understood. She taught us what business school didn't: how to read people, how to spot value before markets did, how to negotiate like you had nothing to lose because you didn't. Desperation, she said, is only weakness if you show it. Turn it inward. Use it as fuel. The people who broke you gave you something they'll never have, a reason to never stop climbing. She introduced us to angel investors, startup founders, hedge fund managers. People who moved money in amounts my parents couldn't conceptualize. And she taught us the most valuable lesson: wealth whispers. If you want to win, she said, do it so quietly they don't know they've lost until it's too late to recover. I thought about Emma's laugh. My father's dismissal. My mother's hand, always reaching for my sister, never for me. I graduated with a 3.97 GPA, 2 patent-pending algorithms, and a job offer from a fintech startup in San Francisco. $140,000 salary plus equity. I was 21. I didn't tell my family about the job. They didn't ask. They showed up to graduation, took photos, asked when I'd move home. I smiled and said, "We'll see." I never went back. The startup exploded. Our algorithm predicted consumer behavior patterns 18 months before they became trends. We sold to Amazon in year 3 for $340 million. My equity was worth $4.2 million after taxes. I was 24. My sister was still living at home, working part-time at a dental office, posting Instagram photos about finding herself. I didn't buy a flashy car. Didn't move to a penthouse. I bought a modest condo in Oakland, drove a used Camry, and did what Professor Chin taught me. I made my money work. Real estate in emerging markets. Index funds. A small stake in 3 early-stage companies that had something my algorithm flagged as pre-viral indicators. 2 failed. 1 became a unicorn. By 27, I had $18 million in liquid assets. By 30, I cleared $50 million. I lived on $60,000 a year and invested everything else. My parents had no idea. We talked maybe twice a year. Obligatory calls on Christmas and my birthday, conversations that lasted 7 minutes and covered nothing. They talked about Emma's new boyfriend, the weather, their refinanced mortgage. I said I was doing fine and keeping busy. They never asked what I did for work. Never asked if I was happy. Never asked anything that required them to see me as a person instead of the child who didn't need attention. I let them forget me. It was easier that way. Last year, I was in Seattle for a conference. Grabbed coffee at a place near Pike Market, working on my laptop, when I overheard a couple behind me. I'm telling you, Diane, if we could just get another $80,000, we could make the down payment. That house has been our dream for 25 years. I knew the voices before I turned around. My parents. Older, grayer. My father's shoulders curved in a way I didn't remember. My mother's hands shaking slightly as she stirred her coffee. I kept my back to them. Opened my laptop camera, tilted the screen. Watched their reflection. We've been saving, my mother said. But Emma's wedding next year, and she'll need help with the deposit on the venue, and then theirs. I know, my father said. We'll figure it out. We always do. They talked for 40 minutes. About the house on Riverside Drive, the one they'd dreamed about since I was a child. About how it was finally for sale, $2.1 million, and they'd saved $90,000, but the bank wouldn't approve them for the rest. Too close to retirement. Debt-to-income ratio too high. About how they'd given Emma money for 3 different business ideas that never materialized. About how they didn't regret it because she needed the support. They never mentioned me once. I paid for my coffee, walked outside, and called my realtor. I need you to make an offer on a property. Today. Full asking price, cash, no inspection. Can you do it? For you? Absolutely. Send me the address. I bought my parents' dream house in 6 hours. The housewarming party was 3 months later. I hired a service to handle everything. Catering, bartenders, a string quartet on the terrace overlooking the river. I invited everyone from my Stanford network, a few childhood neighbors who'd always been kind, and my family. The invitation was cream cardstock, embossed lettering. Riley Lawson invites you to celebrate new beginnings at 847 Riverside Drive. I didn't include a return address. Didn't add a note. My mother called 2 weeks before the party. Riley? Honey? We got your invitation. This is the Riverside house. Are you house sitting for someone? No, Mom. I bought it. I'm moving in next month. I thought you'd like to see it before I settle in. Silence. Long enough I checked if the call had dropped. You bought it. Yes. How? I have a good job. What do you do? I invest. Consult. A few other things. Another silence. Then, we'll be there. They arrived exactly on time. My father in a suit I recognized from my college graduation. My mother in a dress she'd probably bought that week. Emma in something tight and expensive, paid for by my parents, I was sure. I answered the door in jeans and a cashmere sweater. Barefoot. Comfortable. Home. Riley, my mother breathed, looking past me into the foyer with its floating staircase and original chandelier. This is. Come in, I said. They walked through like tourists in a museum. Touching nothing, staring at everything. The kitchen with its marble island and commercial-grade appliances. The library with floor-to-ceiling windows. The primary suite with a bathroom bigger than my childhood bedroom. Emma kept glancing at me, then away. Like she was trying to match the person she remembered with the person in front of her and couldn't make the image align. My father stopped in the living room, staring at the view. The river cutting through the valley, the city lights beyond. We used to drive past this house every Sunday, he said quietly. After church. Your mother and I would plan what we'd do if we ever. He trailed off. I know, I said. I remember. He turned. How did you afford this, Riley? I worked. Saved. Invested. Got lucky a few times. I paused. Turns out not having a college fund to fall back on taught me to be resourceful. The words landed soft but deliberate. My mother's face went pale. Riley, It's fine, Mom. Really. It worked out. The party continued around us. My guests, people who traded in millions, who built companies and exited for fortunes, mingling effortlessly. My family stood clustered together like refugees. Emma finally spoke. Why didn't you tell us? You never asked. That's not fair, Riley. We talk. Twice a year. For 7 minutes. You talk about your life. I say I'm fine. That's not conversation, Emma. That's ritual. My father's jaw tightened. You could have reached out. Told us what you needed. I did. Once. When I was 17. You told me to figure it out because I was capable. So I did. We didn't know. That I'd succeed? I smiled. No, you didn't. Because you never stuck around to find out. You gave my future to Emma and assumed I'd manage. And I did. Better than you ever imagined. My mother's eyes filled. We made a mistake, Riley. We can see that now. Now, I repeated. Now that you're standing in the house you couldn't afford, realizing the daughter you forgot could have bought it for you if you'd ever treated her like she mattered. The room had gone quiet. My guests pretending not to listen while absorbing every word. Emma's voice came out small. Are you saying you would have helped us? If we'd asked. I looked at her. Really looked. She'd aged in ways that weren't just physical. There was a tiredness around her eyes, a tightness in her mouth. She looked like someone who'd been given everything and discovered it wasn't enough. I don't know, I said honestly. Maybe, but you didn't ask. None of you did. And now we'll never know what that version of our family could have been. My father set down his glass. We should go. Wait. I walked to the kitchen, pulled an envelope from the drawer, returned and handed it to him. He opened it, hands shaking slightly. Inside was a check for $180,000. That's what Grandpa left me. With interest. Calculated at the average S&P return over the past 13 years. I paused. I don't need it. Never did. But I wanted you to see what it became when someone who actually valued it put it to work. He stared at the check like it might catch fire. Keep it. Don't keep it. Give it to Emma. I don't care. I leaned against the counter. I just wanted you to understand what you taught me that day you took it. That I didn't matter enough to protect. That my future was negotiable. That love in our family was a resource, and I wasn't worth the investment. Riley, you taught me to depend on myself. To trust no one. To build walls so high no one could hurt me again. And you know what? It worked. I'm successful. Wealthy. Independent. Everything he said I'd be. I smiled, and it wasn't kind. But I'm also alone. No partner. No close friends. No family I can trust. Because you taught me that people who love you will choose someone else when it matters. My mother was crying now, silent tears streaking her makeup. So thank you, I continued. For the lesson. For the motivation. For showing me exactly who you were before I invested any more of my heart in people who didn't see its value. They left 20 minutes later. The check still on the counter where my father had set it, untouched. Emma paused at the door. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't know it hurt you. You didn't ask, I said. That was the problem. You never asked. After they left, one of my guests, a woman who'd built a billion-dollar pharmaceutical company, approached with 2 glasses of wine. That, she said, handing me one, was the most expensive therapy session I've ever witnessed. I laughed, surprising myself. Worth every penny. Do you feel better? I thought about it. Looked around the house, the life I'd built, the fortress of success I'd constructed from rejection. I don't know, I admitted. I thought I would. Thought revenge would feel like closure. And? It just feels quiet. She nodded. That's because revenge isn't the ending, honey. It's just the intermission before you figure out what you actually want. So here's my question for you. Was Riley right? Was this justice or just pain with better furniture? If you made it this far without subscribing, I honestly don't know what you're waiting for. A personal invitation? Consider this it. This channel tells stories about the cost of winning when you're playing alone. About what we become when we're forced to choose between connection and survival. Subscribe if you want more. Comment if you have something to say. And if you're still holding back, still watching from the sidelines without committing, ask yourself why. What's the worst that could happen if you actually engaged with something that makes you feel? New stories daily. For those of us who learn to win in silence. Because sometimes the loudest revenge is the life they said you'd never live.